Well, good afternoon again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. Your host, Tiffany Daniels, and once again, we're spilling tea all over the Dr. Andrew Wakefield study that restarted the modern current anti-vax movement. This is, in particular, the investigative piece done by Brian Deere back about around 2008 that dissected and pulled out all the inconsistencies, the misrepresentations, and the down and out lies that are riddled throughout that original clinical study that was submitted to, oh my gosh, I can't believe, the Lancet back in the late 1990s. We're going to do brief disclaimers and trigger warnings, and we're going to go to where we left off last Friday on to case selection. Alright, folks, everything that we go through in the Down the Rabbit Hole series in regards to the current anti-vax movement as we know it and how it came to be, you're going to find the pertinent links right there in the description box for you. And every time we go over something else that's new, you will receive a link so that you can click on it and get your eyeballs on it for yourself. So if you want to do your own deep dive in regards to the subject, I absolutely welcome you to do so. Trigger warning. Folks, this channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We do cover some pretty dark topics like the Dutch Rotenberg Educational Center, Tobin World, Agape Boarding School for Boys, and Circle of Hope. And on occasion, we do use profanity as well. So if your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, parental supervision is very much advised. If you are gung-ho MAGA or gung-ho Democrat, I am not. More than likely, throughout the case of these multiple series I'm trying to juggle at once, more than likely something is going to come out of my mouth that is probably going to offend you. Now, if you can just let it roll down your back, then please stay with us. If not, maybe check out some cat videos? I don't know. Use the description box to read for yourself. Right? Okay. And no flaming in the comments. Also, any type of questions that end up in my comment section in regards to any of my videos, in particular the ones in regards to Supplemental Security Income SNAP in Section 8, with the question of, but did use your family? I will block your tone-deaf ass from being able to interact with my channel, my moderators, or any people that are a part of my small community, because we just don't have time for that nonsense. Alright? Everybody's under enough stress currently. I am not going to allow that to go on. Nobody's got time for it. Now, let me go on to where we were. Case selection. The frequency of these beliefs should not have surprised Wakefield, retained as he was to support a lawsuit. Remember, folks, that clinical study was being done all in the service of individuals trying to win a lawsuit in regards to some vaccine manufacturers. And don't forget, during the time that Wakefield had just patented an alternative form of the vaccines in question. So very much, we got contacted, we did this clinical study, he gets money for that, and he saw a chance to grift a little bit more past the money from the lawsuit by using that study to get people to maybe look at his vaccine as an alternative. Create a problem. Create a solution to the problem. Pretend you're the savior. And for reasons that are quite beyond me, nobody apparently can see through the nonsense, or should I say, not enough people do. anybody who speaks out against it, well, you're a part of the conspiracy. If that were true, you all really think I'd be in Southwest Missouri still? Or that I would be taking up all this time on these videos instead of using the so-called millions of dollars I'm supposedly getting for speaking against this nonsense to maybe, I don't know, fix my 2 front teeth that are slowly getting melted and eroded by extreme acid reflux? Because yeah, I'm just saying, I wouldn't be voluntarily going around like that. Alright? Just saying. But anyways, I just wanted to remind you guys of that. If it sounds like a grift, it's probably because it's a grift. In the month that Barr engaged in, 2 years before the paper was published, the lawyer touted the doctor in a confidential newsletter to his MMR clients and contacts. So in other words, they did not reach out to Mr. Wakefield independently and on their own with their own concerns. These are folks that are already in touch with a lawyer who says you should go speak to this guy. What's wrong with that? There's already inherent bias. Well, I know what caused it. And then you can have people like Wakefield and Barr saying, oh no, of course you're right. And here's our evidence to prove it's true. Yeah, that's what's wrong with it. Independently seeking a doctor on your own in regards to what could be possibly concerns in regards to your young child shouldn't be coerced. If it was actually organic, one would hope that you get directed towards a doctor that actually knows what they're doing and what they're talking about. You know? Just saying. Let me go ahead and continue. He has deeply depressing views about the effect of vaccines on the nation's children, Barr said. He is also anxious to arrange for tests to be carried out on any children who are showing symptoms of possible Crohn's disease. So it's not enough to grift off of us autistic folk. They got to grift off individuals with Crohn's disease as well. Is anybody surprised? Anybody? At all? I'm not. Just because Big Pharma is greedy does not mean the snake oil salesman making money off of desperate parents by selling them things such as powder or little pads to put on your feet to draw out heavy metals. There is a whole slew of snake oil so-called cures in regards to autism. Pretty much it all draws back to this. And it's not just like, well, maybe it's associated. No, there's direct correlation there. Andrew Wakefield was the dude that made everybody paranoid that they were going to catch mercury and die from the MMR vaccine. Okay? That is where that comes from. Just saying. The following signs to look for. If your child has suffered from all or any of these symptoms, could you please contact us, and may it be appropriate to put you in touch with Dr. Wakefield. Does this sound like some of the commercials we all see sometimes late at night? Hey, do you have these symptoms? Were you on this pill? You might qualify for compensation. Please call this phone number. Because that's what it sounds like to me. Problem with such things like that is confirmation bias. Which means you've already predetermined in your own head what's causing something. And you are not willing to listen to any form of evidence from anyone to the contrary. But if you go on Google and find enough snake oil people to confirm what you've already decided is the issue, You see where I'm going here? Yeah. You've already got it in your head that this is the problem. You have your lawyers agree with you and then send you to this quack doctor that's going to tell you that you are right. Nobody is even suggesting to these parents to also check maybe with a second doctor that is not attached to the law firm for a second opinion. And if you're so sure of your claims, why wouldn't these parents be encouraged to go get a second opinion from another objective source, another doctor that doesn't have a dog in the fight, to actually make sure that what you're hearing is correct? Is not second opinion something that is heavily encouraged in our society in regards to diagnoses? Makes you think, doesn't it? Let me go ahead and continue. The listed symptoms included pain, weight loss, fever, and mouth ulcers. Can anyone explain to me, as though I am 5, what that has to do with autism? Because last time I checked the DSM-5, which I was also one of the commenters on when the current DSM-5 was under development, I can tell you, when it talks about autism, pain, weight loss, fever, and mouth ulcers are nowhere in the criteria that leads up to an autism diagnosis. Now, you can have comorbid conditions. I have quite a few. First off, I'm literally always in pain. All day, every waking hour. Because I have constant, never-ending spasms in my legs. And if I just turn here and put my legs up, and I'm sorry, I'm not a good camera person, or I would show you that, the muscles in my legs will begin to involuntarily jump. In particular, tends to be concentrated on, like, right behind the back of the kneecaps and in the calves. If there's a storm, it travels up into my spine, my arms, and my fingers. We still to this day, in spite of multiple tests, do not know exactly what's going on there. What we can say for certain, though, is it has absolutely nothing to do with me being autistic. What about weight loss? I've always been skinny. There was a very short time period in my life when I was just a little bit more chunky, and real reason for that was during that time I was a very clinically depressed, anxiety-ridden, alcoholic train wreck during that period of time in my life. So there was weight loss, weight gain, weight loss, weight gain. Fever. Fevers can also be, I got sick, I've got a cold, I've got the flu. I just ran around outside like a chicken with my head cut off in about 115 degrees heat. That may seem like a fever. Gotta love Missouri weather. Mouth ulcers, none of that at all, in any way, shape, or form, has anything to do with an autistic diagnosis. But you may find people who are autistic that do have those issues. That doesn't mean they're related. You can have several different diagnoses, comorbid in the same person, that have absolutely nothing to do with one another. Now, they may affect one another during times of increased pain, particularly in storms or right before an ice storm, to get very specific. I can get frustrated and more tired because my muscles are involuntarily working overtime all over my body. So I'm more tired, also known as more cranky, and weirdly enough, without my current medication, the more tired, the more anxiety ridden. But it's still a separate diagnosis. Okay? You can have more than one diagnosis and have them completely unrelated to each other, but still affect one another. It's how the human body works. It's crazy, it's fascinating, and it's more of the true story instead of this weird fan fiction that they created to grift off of desperate people. Let me go ahead and continue. Clients and contacts were quickly referred, thus an association between autism, digestive issues, and worries about MMR. The evidence that launched the vaccine scare was bound to be found by the Royal Free's clinicians because this was how the children were selected. See what I mean by preconceived bias and how it can wreck the integrity of a clinical study? You can't already have in your head that this is an answer before you conduct a study. If you do that, you will find evidence that agrees with your preconceived notions. More often than not, it's usually incorrect. If you want to do an honest clinical study, you can't have any type of absolute assertions that this is the answer. Usually you have to approach it as this may be an answer. And not just that, but look into other possible causes as well while you're going throughout the entirety of the study. You're not married to one answer and one answer only. Therefore, let's face it, the science is more honest. Because you're not already saying, no, this is the answer, I know it's this is the answer, and the clinical study is going to prove it. It is, I don't know the answer. I think it might possibly be this. In different points in time, this has been suggested, and this has been suggested. Let's do a clinical study and find out. You notice the difference between the two? Yeah, so do I. Let's go ahead and continue. Moreover, through the omission of the paper of some of the parents' beliefs that the vaccine was to blame, the time length for the lawsuit sharpened, with concerns logged from 11 of 12 families. The maximum time given to the onset of alleged symptoms was forensically unhelpful for 4 months. But in a version of the paper circulated at the Royal Free 6 months before publication, reported concerns fell to 9 of the 12 families, but with an unhelpful maximum of 56 days. Finally, Wakefield settled on 8 of 12 families with a maximum interval of alleged symptoms of 14 days. Between the latter two versions, revisions also slashed the mean time to alleged symptoms from 14 to 6.3 days. So we're just botching numbers here to make sure our assertion is what ends up being the results. Not how clinical studies are supposed to be run. You don't get to fudge up the numbers and then publish it and expect to not get some form of repercussion. In these children, the mean interval from exposure to the MMR vaccine to development of the first behavioral symptoms was 6 days, indicating a strong temporal association. He emphasized a patent for, among other things, his own prophylactic measles vaccines 8 months before the Lancet paper. If it smells like a rat, folks, it's usually a rat. If he put out that patent 8 months before the Lancet paper was published. And if he didn't even mention that up front, it looks shady. Because it is. Alright, let us continue here. I want to see about how much we got on this one. Alright, we're going to make it work. This leaves child 3. He was 6.5 and lived in Merseyside, 200 miles from the hospital. He received MMR at 14 months with the first concerns recorded in the general practitioner's notes 15 months after that. His mother, who 4 years later contacted Wakefield on the advice of jabs, told me that her son had become aggressive towards a brother, and records say that his vocabulary had not developed. Allow me to explain that again for the people in the back. Did he have a vocabulary and lose it? Or did he never meet the vocabulary milestone at all? Because that difference is extremely important to this conversation here. If his vocabulary had never developed, that is not regression. That is developmental delay. Regression says, I had these skills and then all of a sudden I didn't, they went the way of the dodo. Developmental delay is never had those skills in the first place and they're not developing now when it should be in order to hit those developmental milestones for growing kids. Right? And that is the thing, folks. That difference between regressive or developmental delay has been used to confuse decades and decades of desperate parents. You gotta be explicit when you are talking about the differences between the two, because if you don't, things like what Dr. Andrew Wakefield put forward seem possibly plausible. But if you understand that it is not regression, if you never develop the skill at all, but is instead what is referred to in the service system and in the medical model as a developmental delay instead, you understand that that lack of not reaching that milestone did not necessarily come because your kids got their shots on time. It's because you have to be a certain age when they expect you to start developing your vocabulary as a young child. Alright? So you're talking about, 15 months, years old when these kids are supposed to start getting ready to talk. They're babbling mama, dada. Right? If the child never spoke, and you're only noticing it now because they're not meeting that milestone, where in this point in the child's life, there should be a little bit more in having your vocabulary become a little bit more developed. That's how we understand that did not come from a shot. Whether they had the MMR vax or not, more than likely they were not going to hit that milestone, because we are born with it. And the only reason why it seems weird now, and you didn't notice it earlier, is because when your kid is that young, you usually do not have an unreal expectation where they are going to be speaking in an advanced type of manner. Nobody's going to look at a 1-year-old and expect them to, like, I don't know, recite one of the poems from inside J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion, for example. Right? But when they become 2, 3, and they're still not talking, that's when you begin to notice things. And just because you're noticing it now does not mean that this is something that has developed out of nowhere. It's always been a thing, you're just noticing it now because you understand at that age where developmentally your kid's supposed to be, but they're not. Developmental delay. Learn the difference between the two and don't let anyone manipulate you in trying to confuse regression and developmental delay. They are not the same thing. And it's extremely important to this particular conversation because their whole premise is this idea of regressive autism. My kid is fine, they got a shot, they regressed, now I want money. I'm not making fun of it. I know people who genuinely believe that. That's why telling the people the difference between the two is important. Because you have more than just a few shysters, just like Andrew Wakefield, who are more than happy to grift off of their desperation. Just saying. Let me go ahead and continue here. We both felt that the MMR needle had made child 3 go the way he is today. The parents wrote to a local pediatric neurologist, Louis Rosenblum, 18 months before their son's referral to London. They told him they wanted justice from the vaccine's manufacturer and that they had been turned down for legal aid. Although it is said that the MMR has never been proven to make children to be autistic, we believe that the injection has made child 3 to be mentally delayed, which in turn may have triggered off the autism. For the love of God, you don't trigger the autism, it's simply there. My actions can be triggered due to sensory issues, due to my PTSD, due to my anxiety disorder. But something can just set off the autism. Mother of God. You're autistic or you're not. There's no, but it was a dormant gene and suddenly it just like boom and they're autistic. Not how it works. Come on now. You notice that a child is not developing where you expect them to around a certain age. Because previously, they were not expected to be developing within that area. When it's time to hit that milestone and your child isn't, that's when you begin to notice these issues. That is not caused by a vaccine. You're either developmentally delayed or you're not. There is no sudden onset of it that comes out of nowhere. It was always there. It's just more noticeable now because for the first time, the child's not meeting the milestone in regards to developing their vocabulary. That doesn't mean it wasn't always there. It means it is now noticeable because your child's supposed to be doing these things and they're not. That's not regression. That's something that was always there. We're just noticing it now because they should be here and they aren't. And it triggered off the autism. Folks, I can't just take my autism off and stick it in my purse and then go about my day. Nor do I carry it like inside my sock, inside my shoes. I can't take it out of me and stick it in my back pocket. I'm sorry, but the way people use the term sometimes just really, really bothers me. You're autistic or you're not. Nothing sets it off. It's something that just simply is. Like being born brunette, being born with blue eyes. It's something that just is. It just. I'll shut up now. Let me continue. I visited this family twice. Their affected son was now a teenager and a challenge both to himself and to others. His mother said that his diagnosis was originally severe learning difficulties with autistic tendencies, but that she had fought to get it changed to autism. As for a connection with MMR, there's only suspicion. I do not think his family was sure on one way or the other. When I asked why they took him to the Royal Free, his father replied, "We were just vulnerable and we were looking for answers." See, that's the bottom line, folks. That's why it is so damn important that parents know the difference between developmental delay and actual regression. Because when they don't know the difference, they can be taken advantage of by some of these scummiest pieces of crap on planet Earth. Okay? We got to get better when we are dealing with parents in regards to getting information out there so they can't be taken advantage of by shysters like Mr. Andrew Wakefield. Let me go ahead and continue here. What was unquestionably true was that child 3 had serious bowel trouble, intractable lifelong constipation. This was the most consistent feature among the 12 children's symptoms and signs, but being the opposite of an expected finding in inflammatory bowel disease, it was nowhere mentioned in the paper. This young man was so severe that he was dosed at his special school, his mother said, with up to 5 packets of laxative a day. And I'm going to mention something I always mentioned. As I told you all, my stomach issues are bad enough that they're literally melting my front teeth, which is why I try to hide them as much as humanly possible. And yeah, no open mouth smiles for my ass. The point is, some of us have stomach issues, but it doesn't mean it has anything to do with the autism, folks. Wanna know what helps exacerbate my acid reflux? It's a fact that I am being forced to live in a world that is not built for people like me, and in fact, a good majority of the time is actually hostile towards people like me. That kicks in the anxiety. The anxiety kicks in the acid. The acid melts the teeth and sends me into absolute agony sometimes, as though someone took a torch that was on fire, shoved it down my throat, all the way into my gut, and setting my insides on fire. I know, kind of graphic. But it is what it feels like, though. Has nothing to do with autism, has everything to do with the fact of the anxiety that comes with being in a world not built for us, and a world that is either passively against us or actively against us. It is what it is. Right? Okay. You always knew when his stomach was hard, she told me, in terms echoed over the years by many parents involved with Wakefield. He would start headbutting, kicking, breaking anything in the house. Then he would go to the toilet and release it. Now, does anybody actually think that maybe it's just a person who's trying to communicate something? By the way, you can have communicative disorders that are not necessarily autism, even though if there's some similar features. Stick to actual, well-certified clinician diagnosticians, folks. So I'm going to tell you. For the Royal Free Team, however, when reporting on these patients, some motility issues were sidelined in the hunt for Wakefield syndrome. In almost all the children, they noted commonly swollen glands in the terminal ileum and what was reported as non-specific colitis. In fact, as we revealed in the BMJ last April, the hospital's pathology service found the children's colons to be largely normal, but a medical school review changed the results. I like the air quote of review. Go on, Brian Deere. Spill all the tea for us. In this evolution of the gut pathology noted in the records to what was published in the paper, Child 3's case is a prime example. The ileocolonoscopy, which GMC persecution and defense experts agreed was not clinically indicated, the hospital's pathologist found all colon samples to be within normal histological limits. But 3 months after the boy was discharged, Walker-Smith recalled the records and changed the diagnosis to intermittent ileocolitis. In other words, we are changing what we wrote down after events happened. Funny that. I think sadly this was the first child who was referred, and the long-term help we were able to give in terms of dealing with the constipation was not there, he told the GMC panel. However, we had excluded Crohn's disease and we had done our best to try and help this child, but in the end we did not. So, that is the Lancet 12, the foundation of the vaccine scare. No case was free of misreporting or alteration. Taken together, NHS records cannot be reconciled with what was published to such a devastating effect in the journal. And of course, this is a pop-up. We're going to take a look at it real quick. So this is the table from the study that they did. See all that? Regressive developmental disorder. That is a diagnosis that does not exist. There is no such thing as regressive autism disorder, folks. There is only autism spectrum disorder. Okay? You'll hear that terminology used by people like RFK Jr. because it was popularized by people like Andrew Wakefield. And it has been used ever since that study came out. But it is not an official diagnosis. You will not find it in the DSM-5, the DSM-4, or even the DSM-3. Alright. I know it's just a little bit, but what we're going to do is we're going to leave the last part of Brian Deere's investigative piece for our next upcoming Friday. We're going to go ahead and close out for today. We don't get very many views on this channel, and the few we do tend to get removed from time to time. So folks, if you could please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time, and as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea absolutely do hope you have a good one. I will see you all tomorrow. I'll be coming out with the Medicaid video for that series, of course, and be going over some further things in regards to eligibility so I can counter evil Phil Hartman and his stupidity. Again, I appreciate your time. I hope you all have a good one. Goodbye, everyone.